Mehdi Hasan challenges Graham Platner on his tattoo and more. Let's take a look. Now that Graham Platner is the it boy of the day, let's take a look at what Graham Platner is saying, what Graham Platner has done so far, how he has defended himself. This surely will not spark some unbelievably unproductive discourse in this community. Of all communities, let's take a look.
With Israel.
Shameful. What has happened in Gaza, it's the moral question of our time, and we failed it miserably. We need to get money out of politics. The cost of war is something I have seen up front. I have seen friends die.
How do you avoid the John Fetterman vibes?
That man is the bane of my existence. It is something that's been fascinating for me in this entire experience, is realizing just how many people who run for office don't actually have any deeper political beliefs.
When exactly did you find out that the tattoo on your chest could be a Nazi tattoo or seen as one?
I had it for 17 years. I went through 2 security clearances. Never came up.
Is there other stuff out there that's going to come out?
Yeah, of course. Of course it never came up. They were like, oh, you're going to get promoted for having that tattoo.
Graham Platner came out of nowhere. An oyster farmer from Maine running to unseat veteran Republican Senator Susan Collins in the midterm elections this fall. Platner, who formerly served with the Marines and the Army with deployment in Iraq and Afghanistan, is running a very progressive anti-war campaign opposing Trump's war in Iran and speaking out about Israel's genocide in Gaza. He's leading in the polls against his big-name Democratic opponent in the June 9th primary, Governor Janet Mills. But Platner's campaign is not without controversy. He joins me now to unpack it all. Welcome to Mehdi Unfiltered, Graham Platner.
Thank you very much, Mehdi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Graham, one of the central debates around your candidacy is the word, and you've heard it a lot, especially from the media, electability. The establishment view is that you are not electable. You are someone who is unorthodox, you have no experience, you have a lot of baggage, and that Janet Mills, the governor, who people know, she's the safe bet. What's your take on electability?
Well, I think that is a take that comes from people who are really trying to protect their interests and protect the system that they're working within. In their version of politics, sure, but their version of politics has been losing for quite some time. I mean, the zeitgeist here in Maine is pretty clear. People do not want establishment politicians. People do not want to continue doing the exact same thing we've done for years, and people don't want to run the exact same kind of playbook that is lost to Susan Collins over and over and over again. We are doing something entirely different. And it is ironic to me that the people who are crowing about electability are the same folks who tend to take polls seriously. But we are at now something like 12 or 13 consecutive polls that have me winning the primary by substantial margins and winning the general by significantly higher margins than the sitting governor would against Susan Collins. And so I think there has just been a shift in what politics is in this country, and a lot of the people in places of political power, the people who think that they have experience, the ground has shifted beneath them, and they don't really know how to react.
This is good. Having a little bit of unfiltered, uninterrupted Graham Platner in this community will be good.
There's a very fair point about the polls. Your critics, though, would say, we have a Republican president who was elected in 2016 with 0 executive or legislative experience. He didn't know anything about government. He had never been in public life. He was a guy from reality TV and Home Alone 2. Why should Democrats follow that path? You are an oyster fisherman, a Marine vet, which is great. But what do you know about legislating? What do you know about foreign policy, they might say?
Well, I would say, one, it's not the same path because I have an immense amount of experience dealing with American foreign policy firsthand.
Yes.
I have an immense amount of experience with the challenges of returning home from the failures of that foreign policy. But I also have a lot of experience in re-engaging with my community and building a small business and being successful materially down here in the real world. I think that one of our problems is we have a lot of people who think that experience comes from being part of the political system that has brought us to this moment. But that politics that brought us here, that's the problem. Having experience in building the system that allows billionaires to consolidate the wealth that they've consolidated, that's allowed for a system that has created essentially unlivable conditions for a lot of working people in this country, where things like housing and healthcare and the general affordability of goods and services goes through the roof. I have experience with that. with the exact, or I don't have experience with that. I have experience with the outcomes of that kind of politics. And I think what we really need are people from the normal world who understand that policy begets real material things for people. And that is an experience that we have lost in many places in the halls of power. And I think it's one of the reasons why this campaign is so successful, is many Americans, certainly many Mainers, believe that that's exactly the kind of experience that's going to get us into a better future.
That's undeniably true that politics and Congress does not reflect the real world or real people and working people. And clearly you've been popular because of that. I'm not going to pretend I don't share your politics. I do. Everyone knows that. When I watch your race, though, forgive me, I cannot forget the John Fetterman race. John Fetterman was someone I supported in his primary. I supported him in the general. When he was being attacked by Republicans after his health issues, after his stroke, I defended him. And now you look at John Fetterman, and he is a genocidal, warmongering, Trump-loving Senate Democrat, refuses to go against the filibuster and all sorts of other things he promised to be a vote on. And of course, he wasn't just popular because he was a progressive. He was seen...
Yeah, everyone's got that John Fetterman. John Fetterman got a stroke, and it caused him to become the most pro-Israel senator. It caused him to become the most right-wing, one of the most right-wing senators in Congress. But it also basically stroked out half of the left, where no one can look at a guy who codes as a chud and ever take them seriously ever again. Everyone is constantly terrified. There's this like genuine trauma. It wasn't just a head trauma that John Fetterman got. It was a head trauma that he delivered to like damn near the entirety of the electoralist left, where they're all like, no, every single guy is John Fetterman. Everyone is John Fetterman. I say it's a trauma response because you're not thinking clearly when you make these assessments, okay? John Fetterman is a unique once-in-a-lifetime ordeal. He got hit with the CIA stroke gun that makes you pro-Israel. More pro-Israel than he already was. He got hit with the CIA stroke gun that makes you the most right-wing senator in the country. It's a very different situation.
As an ordinary person too, he was, he wore a hoodie. I notice you're wearing a hoodie right now. He wears a hoodie. Yeah, so you must get this, Graham Platner. Like, how do you avoid the John Fetterman vibes? People say, I like Graham Platner, but I hope he doesn't turn into John Fetterman once he's elected.
I will just say that man is the bane of my existence. I get asked about this and everything. I will say this, I'm going to wear a suit on the Senate floor.
Okay.
That's how you can be on the Senate floor. And if you want to be effective in the Senate,
well said.
You have to be on the floor. Otherwise, I don't know, what's the point? The other thing is, and I think this is really important, much of the story around John Fetterman was a bit of a story. He had been trying to get into politics for quite some time.
Yes.
When you look at his background, for many, it was clear he had political ambitions. I really was just an oyster farmer, and the extent of my political ambitions was being the harbor master in my town of 1,000 people. The reason I'm doing this is I do have a theory of power in which the U.S. Senate has a extremely important function. I think because it's a unique...
Was he asked about Blackwater? I don't know if Mehdi asked him about Blackwater, but let's be real. Plenty of people have already. And the reality of the matter is this is not a part of the calculus at all for Mainers. It's just not. Like, I know you guys desperately want to know. You're like, oh, what the was the deal? And I certainly do too. And I've listened to some of his responses. To give it the fairest of all shakes, the idea, I mean, I find it totally ridiculous to join Blackwater in 2016 of all, of all times, right? Like, it's like long after we know that this is a war crimes factory. And at best, I think, like, if I'm being as charitable as possible, he joins Blackwater, as many people have, after they've done their tours, when they feel like there's no other option for them to make money. For the record, I'm not giving this is not a moral assessment. I'm just telling you what the calculation is. I know that everyone is going to look at what I just said and go, oh, yeah, dude, I'm going to go and join the baby murder factory. I'm not saying it's a good thing, okay? I need you to understand. He joins, he does embassy security, and after like a couple months doing embassy security, he's like, this shit sucks, and he leaves. Somewhere along the line, I think he either got one-shotted by shrooms and Michael Brooks and Majority Report, but somewhere along the line, his mentality changes, and he turns into somewhat of a radical person with politics that closely resemble ours. I think that's probably what happened with Graham Platner. The reason why I say that is because if you look closely at his social media activity, specifically his Reddit, you see that transition. He goes from in 2014 when he's like looking at the Hamas raid on Israeli occupied forces compound, and he's like offering analysis on that. He's not doing that from a place where he's like, no, anti-colonial resistance forces have a right to militarily resist against other militaries. Like, it's totally ridiculous. He's looking at it like a chud. In 2014, when he's like covering that on Reddit, when he's like being critical, when he's like talking about what Hamas did on that IDF base, he's looking at it like a chud. Yeah, he was just like completely cold, calculated, and analytical in his approach to the effective military operation that Hamas conducted on a IDF base, right? Where did you find that Reddit stuff? It's all over. What do you mean? It's been like the number one oppo. This guy came out of the gates swinging against Israel, saying that he's pro-Medicare for all with a Bernie Sanders endorsement. Of course there was going to be opposition research. Of course they were going to come after him. He's not like a professional politician. He doesn't have that same pedigree. He's not like normally, when you come from a military background, you go through the officers program and then go to Yale and get a law degree from Yale or an MBA from Harvard, and then you go into Congress. You do a brief stint through the officers program or potentially with the State Department, right? Like a CIA affiliated role. Or in the case of J.D. Vance, I think he did. Was he a JAG lawyer or was he? No, that was Ron DeSantis. J.D. Vance was like a Marine Corps press, I think, right? That's the normal professional career to become a politician. You don't actually go through the process of grunt, multiple tours served, actually in front of the line of fire, actually holding a machine gun and maybe even doing some heinous things. That's not the normal route. But there was an unbelievable oppo dump from the start, and it didn't do anything. So we know his background. We know his like ideological changes, his rehabilitation in some respects, right? We know the journey that he went through because it was well documented, and it was also spread around like wildfire. He was a grunt. He was a machine gunner for the Marine Corps. He's a crayon eater. And somewhere along the line, he had a real change of attitude. It's very clear. Unless you personally think this is the most elaborate ruse from the CIA to deeply embed in leftist communities with the notion that like there would be a broad leftist movement somewhere along the line, right? And that the CIA would have to infiltrate it. And we're thinking like decades ahead. And this guy is the perfect guy to do that with. But then in an effort to like boost his profile as like a real one, they also tarnished his reputation as aggressively as possible, and he withstood one of the most cynical oppo dumps of all time for a primary, as Bronco from Jacobin writes. Reminder that Graham Platner weathered one of the most cynical smear/cancel culture campaigns, which painted him as holding virtually the exact opposite of every view he ever expressed, and by a Dem establishment that 5 minutes earlier was decrying cancel culture, no less. For what he was trying to accomplish was win the primary in the Senate race in the Democratic Party. It didn't work. And let's not pretend that a massive amount of the community ate this shit up. Oh, no, they did. But they ate it up leftistly. That's why I'm saying it was a very sophisticated smear campaign.
Uniquely, it was built to be a place of power for elites to hold back working class power, but that actually makes it a unique target to build working class power, because the bang for your buck with Senate seats is pretty spectacular when it comes to power versus the funds and the kind of apparatus necessary to win.
I did not believe him at first, but then he said he was something on the wall in Croatia and bought it. Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a tattoo on shore leave in Croatia, the likelihood that that is going to be a Nazi tattoo is unbelievably high. It's Croatia. Of course you went to a tattoo parlor and they were like, hey, this is, we're going to give you this tattoo. Most places in the United States of America, most tattoo shops in the United States of America would not have that tattoo. As a matter of fact, they would never tattoo that. As a matter of fact, they would literally offer free coverage of tattoos like that because it's a Nazi tattoo. Tattoo parlors know exactly what the common Nazi tattoos are. Croatia is the one place where you have an unbelievably high likelihood that the tattoo that you're getting is probably a Nazi tattoo. Anyway, I've covered this stuff extensively. It doesn't matter anymore. I don't know why we're going over it over and over again. But yeah,
I think standing up against the Trump administration building a better future. We need loud voices in the Senate who are willing to build power and wield it. Fetterman, really doesn't come from that kind of, I think, one, structural critique, and certainly didn't have, when you look closer, a long track record of being very specific or very, what's the word I'm looking for here? Consistent on his policies. For instance, on Israel, long before that happened, he's been outspoken in supporting the Israeli government.
Yes.
And, you can find op-eds I wrote in my local paper long before I ever thought about running for U.S. Senate condemning the genocide in Gaza. So there are elements of me that I think are much more legitimate when it comes to some from the normal world.
I want to delve into Israel in just a moment. Just one other name that's associated with you when people talk about your candidacy. Some people call you the...
Platner lied about his time during Blackwater. He said he never worked for Blackwater. No, he said Blackwater had been disbanded by that point, and it was operating under a different name, which is true technically. He's just trying to get off on a technicality, but it's bullshit regardless. Yes, it's a Blackwater. It's what Blackwater became. It's one of the many different security contractors that most veterans go to work for. I think it was, Constellus at that point. Regardless, it doesn't matter. It's still totally worthy of suspicion and scrutiny. Blackwater was disbanded and then recreated under different names over and over again. Academy was another name for it as well. And the reason for why was because they kept doing war crimes. That's it. Because that's what security contractors do. They do war crimes.
White Mamdani. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, which made me chuckle. What do you make of the comparison with Zoran Mamdani? Here is a proud democratic socialist who ran a very populist, leftist, anti-establishment primary campaign and then general election campaign and won. What do you make of the comparisons between you and Zoran Mamdani?
Here's the thing that people don't understand, or at least like the anti-electoralist left doesn't understand for some reason. If you're anti-electoralist and you have a principled stance on this, then fine, it's your choice, right? I'm not like that. I'm not going to argue against you all the goddamn time. I feel like it's unproductive. There's like 12 total people on the planet who have a consistent perspective on this shit, and it's utterly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. However, if you're an anti-electoralist leftist anyway, like, this is not a conversation for you regardless, because whether it's Susan Collins or whether it's Janet Mills or whether it's Graham Platner that's winning this race, winning this seat, it doesn't matter. They're all bourgeois social fascists, two sides of the same coin. So it's not, from your perspective, it doesn't change anything, right? So this is why I never understand why like anti-electoralist leftists or ultras will lose their minds as though they're making a sincere calculation here that like Graham Platner is going to be worse than Susan Collins or Janet Mills. He's not. If you're making an electoralist calculation, then yeah, of course Graham Platner is far better. Reluctantly or not, you would most likely, if you cared about voting for an election at all, if you didn't think that it was a totally ridiculous thing for a real leftist to do, then yeah, you're going to vote for Graham Platner. And for many people, actually, they're going to be excitedly voting for Graham Platner because he demonstrates a lot of the values that many people want. They just don't care about holding power in the U.S. Senate, which seems to be a very short-sighted idea. I know. It just doesn't make any sense, though. Like, given the options that are readily available, I don't think it's inherently anti-electoralist to want him to properly address his history, honestly, in my opinion. I mean, no disagreements there, but I'm pretty sure he has already done so over and over again. There's just never going to be an answer that a lot of people are comfortable with. After all, he has a Nazi tattoo. He had a Nazi tattoo on his chest. How do you explain that beyond, I'm an idiot, I didn't know, okay? You can't explain it. It's impossible to explain. He literally says, I didn't know that it was a Nazi tattoo when I got it. It's not going to be a satisfying answer because the social crime committed in that situation is the maximum social crime. There is literally nothing more egregious that you could do than get a Nazi tattoo. There is no satisfactory answer for that when you have done the worst social crime possible. It's not a real crime. That's why I'm saying it's a social crime, right? There's no answer that will satisfy the goals here. Like what? He slipped and fell into a totem cough? No, of course not. Having said all of that, do I think he knew it was a Nazi tattoo and got it and then changed his belief system but didn't choose to change the tattoo? I don't think so.
Funny.
I think the comparisons are at this point primarily just because anybody who's doing something outside of the normal realm of politics with any kind of populist message for working class people, we're all going to get lumped together. I mean, I think the mayor and I's backgrounds are intensely different.
Yes.
Assume that my gun safe looks a little bit different than his. And there are elements, I think, of where we come from in our worlds and our politics that are different. One thing that I think you can absolutely make a comparison about is our focus on organizing as a political tool, focusing on building power in communities to have that be part of your electoral strategy. We're very much doing that here in Maine. It's why we are succeeding at the rate that we are.
Yes.
And if you look at where the mayor won, it was because he had a lot of people who turned out and organized the old-fashioned way. I think that's a fair comparison.
Do you consider yourself to be a socialist? I know in the past online you've written that you were a communist at one point.
No, I don't. And it's if you read those comments, it's very clear that I'm being very sarcastic.
Fair.
We have a political world in which any kind of populism that's good for working people gets framed as either socialism or communism.
Yes.
I do think we need to tax the rich. I think we need to invest in social programs. I think we need to do all of that. The joke is that I'm certainly not that at all, but we have this kind of vapid political narrative that always has us using these words. That frankly, the words are not being ever used in like a real context.
I think Harry Truman famously said, "You can call me socialist all you want. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do." Let's talk about Israel and the war. You are a military veteran. You spent the better part of a decade in the military. You served in Iraq, Afghanistan. Is that what made you anti-war?
It's part of it. I mean, even when I enlisted, I was skeptical of American foreign policy. I will say once I got in it and it became my profession and it became very much part of who I was and what I was doing, I then kind of threw myself into the work. When I left after my 4th deployment, that was when I really began to look back and recognize that everything, and it was on my 4th deployment to Afghanistan, there was a moment where I was like, we are not doing what we say we're doing. We're not going to win this war. I don't even know what winning this war looks like. I don't think anybody knows that's running this war knows what winning it looks like. And at that point, I began to wonder if we're not doing the thing that we claim we're doing, if we're not bringing democracy.
People obsessing over the 4 tours don't understand it is literally just some banality of evil shit if you don't see it until you step away from it. Blackwater becomes literally just job when you're trying to hold on to a positive income with 30 years of propaganda on top. Yeah, what's inconsistent in his background is the fact that he was like pro-Palestine when he was like 14, and then he joined the American military, the Marine Corps, became a machine gunner, did 4 tours, and then joined back to go on Blackwater. At times he has been, at times he has demonstrated a negative opinion about American warfare, and then has also been a willing participant of it. I personally, and I've said this many times over, I can't repeat this enough, I don't give a shit. A lot of people get super, super mad when I say this, but it's the reality that we live in. The reality that we live in has absolutely normalized this death and destruction campaign. The reality that we live in has normalized this death and destruction campaign. The average American 100% does not have the same hangups that you do about joining the military. They don't. They literally do not see it. They don't understand it. They have not comprehended it. If at any point they do understand it, then that's fantastic. And many veterans, left flank vets in general, have comprehended their actions and work against American imperialism now. You can poo-poo that away all day, every day. Oh, we little infantry vet with an upper R middle-class family that offered to pay for his college, who refused the GI Bill to go to Georgetown and got gifted an oyster business. Like, again, and again. Yes, this background is unbelievably normal. It's a lot more normal. What is abnormal here is who he is now. Who he is now is what is unique, not what he used to do. You have to do away with this mentality that like people are beholden to and permanently stuck as who they used to be. We have to be committed in our belief that people have the capacity to change, learn from their mistakes, become better people, and actually become comrades.
If we're not trying to make the world safer, what are we doing? And when I began to look closer, I really began to fully buy into the fact that these wars just make people wealthy. And these wars are good for people in political power. They use them as electoral tools. They use them in ways to display like their quote unquote strength as leaders. And none of them take into account the human cost. And for me, the human cost is not a theory, and it's not something to be thought about in this sort of non-material way. The cost of war is something I have seen up front. I have seen friends die. I have seen what happens when high explosives interact with children. It's an awful thing. And I fundamentally believe that it should not be the core of how we use our foreign policy.
Do you believe that Donald Trump and the Trump family and Jared Kushner, that part of this Iran war is about them making money?
Yes, of course. I mean, essentially, everything the Trump administration does, at some point, you boil it down to them, their family members, or their inner circle making money off of it. That is certainly part of it.
How would you describe the U.S. relationship with Israel?
I mean, at this point, I would just say shameful. You know, this is what has happened in Gaza it's the moral question of our time, and we failed it miserably. We continue to fail. You know, there's a genocide that has been committed in Gaza, and we continue to not only not stand up against it, but allow it to happen, run political cover for it, run diplomatic cover for it. You know, down the road, history is not going to remember the leaders of this nation of both parties, by the way, who allowed this to happen. It's not going to remember them well. And it brings me an immense amount of shame, and I think it brings a lot of shame to a lot of Americans that even now we're continuing to have this relationship and to support the mass killing of innocent civilians.
So on that note, what would a Senator Graham Platner of Maine do in the United States Congress to prevent us from carrying on our complicit relationship with a genocidal nation?
Well, I certainly would have voted with the 40 Democrats who yesterday voted to stop sending money and arms to the Israeli government. I would support that wholeheartedly. And down the road, if it is a relationship that is going to be repaired, we need to be looking at an entirely different government and an entirely different structure than what exists now. You know, it's not as simple for me as like the genocide just stops and then we turn the bombs and the money back on, right? Like we need to see a hell of a lot more than that to justify American support for an ally who is willing.
Are you saying you would want to see Israel make actual changes to the way it runs itself, controls the Palestinians, for example?
Yeah, sorry, it's going to be really tough for me to poo-poo this guy, okay? You don't listen to what he's saying right now. You're like, oh, well, this is a lesser evil vote. How is it any different than Kamala Harris? It's not a lesser evil vote. What the fuck are you talking about? This is not a lesser evil vote at all.
For example, it's apartheid policies that would be an issue for you.
Yes, absolutely. And illegal settlements need to end. In fact, they need to be rolled back. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to repair this relationship.
Would you follow in the footsteps of Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, who has said she opposes U.S. military aid to Israel, including for the quote-unquote defensive Iron Dome?
Yes. I mean, look, we have laws on the books in this country that say that regimes, governments committing war crimes do not get American aid. But all we are asking is that we follow our own laws here. It's not that complicated.
Your opponent, Janet Mills, was recently asked if she denies that Israel is carrying out a genocide in Gaza. She kind of threw up her hands and just started talking about genocides in Sudan and weirdly in Somalia. She also mentioned the Rwandan genocide from over 30 years ago. She wouldn't say Israel is committing a genocide. She just dodged that point. What do you think's driving that kind of answer and behavior from her?
You know, I very much think she just comes from an era of establishment politicians that are just fundamentally wrong on this issue and who think that these sort of mealy-mouthed, politically incoherent responses are going to be acceptable to the American people, and they're not. People don't want to hear like a 10-minute rambling, winding explanation invoking genocides from 30 years ago and about how concerning it all is. People don't want concern. People want it to stop. And they want politicians and leaders who are going to call it for what it is, for what the entire world sees it for being. And I mean, I just think that there are a lot of establishment politicians who just cannot come to grips with this shift.
Just on that note, just grabbing something you just said a moment ago, do you think the reason for your success so far in the polls is that you do speak like a normal person? Like, is that a problem that has plagued the Democratic Party, that everyone talks like a consultant, speaks in talking points? And actually, Donald Trump showed us that...
That's absolutely 100% a big part of the reason why a lot of people also can't come to terms with who this guy is. That's what it is. A lot of people have been so conditioned into hearing perfectly crafted, focus group tested messaging that when they hear someone just go, yeah, it's a genocide. Yeah, I was in Blackwater, whatever, all this shit. When they hear that, it's just like the Blackwater stuff, they don't even give a fuck about. The people I'm talking about are just like, yeah, I said some really fucked up things on Reddit. It's not who I am now. They go, whoa, what the fuck? Those people, for the most part, don't care that he was a machine gunner or even joined Blackwater. I'm talking about rad libs in general. They care about like the way he talks and the way he presents himself, the way he carries himself, the way he the way he communicates on issues, right?
The American public not only don't care if you don't talk like a politician, they actually prefer it if you don't.
Oh, by 100%. I mean, something that's been fascinating for me in this entire experience is realizing just how many people who run for office don't actually have any deeper political beliefs. Like, for me, being able to explain my positions is relatively easy. I feel like I've got a very strong political foundation. I know what I believe. I know why I believe it. And it's easy for me to talk about it because this is stuff that I believe. I don't have these like pre-memorized focus group tested talking points that I have to Rolodex through in my brain. I'm running on my politics. And what I have found is that when you run on your politics, people just find that accessible and understandable. And when you go out into communities like we've been doing, we hold town halls almost daily. When you do that, and you talk about what you believe, why you believe it, and what policies you want to enact to make those beliefs a reality, people they understand it and they connect with it. And I think that very much has to do with why we've succeeded in the polls thus far.
So on that note, a perfect segue into what I want to talk about next, which I'm sure you're fed up about talking about, but is all the controversies associated with you and especially your online comments from the past. And since you said you're comfortable explaining yourself, let's talk very plainly about some of this stuff, because I know you've spoken about this before, but it's the first time you and I are speaking about any of this. The biggest single controversy of your campaign, which is not going to go away if Susan Collins has her way, is a tattoo you got in 2007 that you've since had covered up of a skull and crossbones that resembles a very infamous Nazi symbol.
Oh, before we get into this, look. The chirpers are already out, okay? Look at that, look. Something you're seeing today is one of the signature characteristics of the left insurgents is that they're very graceless about winning. They got what they wanted in Maine, but instead of pivoting to bring people in and beat Susan Collins, they're doing ongoing factionalism. Hey, Matt, what happened when Zoran won the primary? Oh, that's right. The centrist right-wing candidate launched another candidacy against the Democrat, and virtually all of the top-level Democratic Party bosses did not endorse him. Even after Zoran Mamdani won the election resoundingly in the general, what did the Democratic Party do? Oh, that's right. Kirsten Gillibrand went on a radio show in New York City and called him a jihadist. Okay, unbelievably racist shit he had to withstand in that primary process and then certainly in the general. What the hell are you talking about? It was incredibly disgusting to see and hear from Kirsten Gillibrand, the shit that she said about Zoran after he won the general. Graceless. Talk about graceless. Chuck Schumer to this day has not endorsed Zohran Kwame Mamdani, by the way. What's really funny, by the way, is that Graham Platner celebrated Janet Mills's accomplishments as governor and said that he basically was like, thank you for doing this. You've done incredible work in this state. I appreciate it. I look forward to, working with you. Janet Mills did not endorse him. Yeah. Janet Mills is not yet endorsing Graham Platner for Senate and says he'll have to earn the support of Maine voters. Governor Mills has never voted for Susan Collins, so she will not do so in this election either. As Maine's governor, she will continue to support Democratic candidates across Maine, and she will continue to hear and watch how Graham Platner works to earn the support of Maine voters, just as she will keep a close eye on Maine's congressional and gubernatorial primaries as well. Like, what are you talking about? He earned it so hard you had to drop out of the race. What are you saying? Do you think the Dem establishment right now might throw another candidate on the board, or is it too late? I think it's too late. But remember what I told you about how there would absolutely be people that will engage in myth making, rewriting of history, and talking about how this victory against the centrist candidacy of Janet Mills is actually confirming their priors. That's precisely what Matt Iglesias is doing. Look, I've been very bullish on Platner from day one. The same people that would say Zoran's politics cannot work elsewhere. It only works, D plus 35 district. New York City is too woke. Try that shit in a purple state. Are now going to turn around and be like, well, Maine is actually historically a Democratic safe seat, even though he's literally running to unseat a Republican. Okay, yeah, here's the retcon coming in. I've been pretty bullish on Platner from day one and would really like to see Democrats win the Senate seat to maximize their odds of halting the magnification of the judiciary, even though I don't really agree with Platner about factional issues. Do people on the left want me to continue wanting Platner to win because that will advance shared cross-factional goals? Or if he wins a D+4 state in a very favorable national political climate, will they insist that he has completely discredited everything I believe in? Again, he has discredited everything you believe in. Shut the fuck up, egg boy. You don't know how to lose with grace. Your ideology is dying. Your methods have been proven to be wrong. And he does this over and over again. He does this with Palestine as well. He was like, oh, here we go. The pro-Palestinian crowd doing their thing again. They're electoral poison. It turns out the electoral poison was Matt Iglesias' style of politics, which he cheered on. He was like, oh, I'm agreeing with everything Kamala Harris is saying and doing. It's fantastic. She's going to win the election. Turns out that was a disqualifying moment for Matt Iglesias, but it doesn't matter because as long as you brown nose the super wealthy in this country, you will always have a Substack that they keep pumping money into. Have a little bit of decency, man. I already lived through the message that got 51% of the vote in New York City points the way for the National Democratic Party news cycle without killing myself, so I suppose I can take a main cycle too, but at some point we need to win red states. See? He's moving on. He went from this won't work in a purple state for a red seat to this won't work in a deep red state. This dumb is not going to stop until you're like, hey, if you don't win Mississippi with Marxist-Leninist principles, then your method doesn't work. Goalpost moved again. Now, for the record, I do believe that you can win Mississippi and Alabama with a similar style of left populism, because those places where people are unbelievably poor could also benefit tremendously from leftist economic thought, from leftist legislation. That's what it is. Interesting.
You said you had no idea about the connection, saying, quote, I absolutely would not have gone through life having this on my chest if I knew that. When exactly did you find out that the tattoo on your chest could be a Nazi tattoo or seen as one?
Oh, about 3 or 4 days before I had it covered up. I got that tattoo with some other Marines when we were on shore leave in Croatia in 2007. And then I had it for 17 years. I went through 2 security clearances. I re-enlisted in the United States Army, got screened for gang and hate tattoos, and then I went to work for the State Department on the ambassador security team in Kabul, where I got a top secret clearance and also got screened. Never came up. I took my shirt off in front of my extended Jewish family the entire time. I would not have done that if I thought I had some obviously recognizable white supremacist or Nazi.
Yeah, that's his biggest defense, by the way. Like his relatives, his extended family is Jewish, bro. Like that photo that they released of him dancing with his shirt off, he's in front of his Jewish extended family there, and they're dancing with him. To me, this is unbelievable because I'm very tapped in on racist and Nazi tattoos. But it was shocking to hear both Bernie Sanders and Sam Cedar say, yeah, I didn't know that was a Nazi tattoo. Who cares? But we're not going to sit here and goy-splain, okay? We're not going to do that. If the Council of Jewish Leftist Elders have spoken, then we sit and we learn. They don't have a PhD in racism like you, that's true. Wouldn't this say more about how the tattoo passed government screenings? Yeah, the government screening thing I don't care about because obviously there's plenty of Marines with Nazi tattoos, like straight up. It was shocking to me that even in this community, 60% of chat didn't even know at the time, which was genuinely confusing because I've talked about Nazi tattoos extensively, right?
Simple.
So Graham, why then, and that all sounds perfectly reasonable, especially the security checks. So why then did a former top official on your campaign, Genevieve McDonald, your former political director, tell The Guardian last year, while he may not have known what his tattoo meant when he selected the image, it's not plausible he remained ignorant of its meaning all these years?
I don't know why she said that. She was only on the campaign for a little over a month and would not have known anything about things I would have known. She quit in rather spectacular fashion and then spent some time. Yeah, it's saying
this happened with Abdul too. Very interesting. Abdul had a similar situation. Former person who worked on the campaign quits and then takes opposition research that he basically stole to right-wing outlets. Very interesting. Now, the commonalities here between Abdul El-Sayed and Graham Platner are what? Both Bernie endorsed and both anti-Zionist. Very strange. Very strange stuff, folks.
Deprecating things about the campaign and about myself.
Okay, then why did CNN report that they spoke to an acquaintance of yours from more than a decade ago who said you talked to him about your tattoo resembling a Nazi symbol?
Well, I believe they actually reported on a Jewish insider investigation, which had spoken to one anonymous person who, when they claimed they knew me, it was years. They said they knew me from when I worked at a bar from years I didn't even work at that bar.
Okay.
And
so you're denying that allegation, just to be clear.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It also came out after the story broke, so you know it's.
Just on the bigger picture, I can understand what you're saying, and I'm hearing your denials and the point about your extended Jewish family. It makes sense. And you're a progressive, so people are giving you a lot of leeway because they like your policy platform.
I disagree, by the way. I don't think you get leeway as a progressive. I think you get a way higher standard as a progressive that no other person is ever forced to abide by. A standard that you might not have even placed upon yourself. Now, not in the case of the Totenkopf tattoo, but just in general. The idea, for example, that like, you know, I'm traveling by train, but I took business class rather than coach, which was only, what, $30 to $50 more expensive for a ticket. Like, these are the types of things that people would never think twice about. They would never think twice about. But if you get unlimited leeway if you are not a self-identified progressive, socialist, leftist in general.
But surely you would admit, if you were a Republican who had been found with that tattoo on your chest, people, progressives, Democrats, would be losing their minds, wouldn't they not?
Well, I think if I had that.
Mehdi is such a debate pervert, I swear to God. He literally can't stop himself. He has to hit him. I know he loves Graham Platner. He really likes him. But you know he's got that dog in him where he's like, it's just chipping away. He has to chomp at it a little bit. He loves debating so much. I mean, look, I respect it. You know, it is what it is. He's the only debate lord I respect.
And had displayed at any point in my life any affinity for fascism or bigotry or, you know, racism, then that would absolutely be something to connect. Thing is, in all of my Reddit posts, if you read through them, they've been out there since October, every single one of them. It's fairly clear that I have been long an opponent of fascism, bigotry, and racism. Sometimes with language that people say is too extreme, even though, I don't know, fighting fascism seems like something we should all be dedicated to.
On the language front, though, this has caught up with you now. We talked a moment ago about how popular you've become because you speak like a normal person. But that comes with its own challenges in the political world, which is you've used the word retarded, which I saw you apologize for this week. You've made comments about...
Oh! Mehdi said the R word. He dropped it, bro. Chill.
Women, that both Janet Mills and Susan Collins have attacked you.
Yeah, he should be like, I'm a Redditor, bro. That's the real R word, okay? The real R word, which is the same as a substitute for the other R word, is that I'm a Redditor.
There's the tattoo. Do you at least accept that going into the general election, this is going to be an issue for you because the Republican Party are not going to let this slide. They're going to use this against you. You know.
Yeah, what are they going to do? That he says slurs? That's so funny. Republicans doing the fake woke shit I expect them to do it. They're doing it to me right now, right? Where they're like, oh, Hasan is being mean to black people. It seems like he's anti-black. Bitch, if I was anti-black, you'd love me. The f*** do you mean? Like, oh, Hasan is anti-Asian. Again, if I was actually anti-Asian, if I was being hateful, you would love me. What are you talking about?
Know the word baggage. Do you at least accept?
Trump has literally called Biden the R word. Yeah, exactly.
that from a perceptual point of view, regardless of your individual justifications for all of it, do you accept politically it is a big challenge for you going into a general election with all of this quote-unquote baggage?
I will say I don't really think so, because in my experience thus far going around Maine, a lot of people look at that and say, like, okay, so he's a guy that never wanted to run for office. He's not of the system at all, and he very clearly just comes from the normal world and has existed in the normal world, coming with all of the things that come with that. I mean, I was in the Marine Corps Infantry, and I have worked on a boat on the ocean for the past decade. Salty language, that kind of stuff it is a thing that I am constantly working to improve.
Dude, come on, dude. That's why it's so funny that like Hasanabi heads especially are. It shocks me that there are people in this community that look at this dude and will literally repeat the same lines of attack that I receive on a daily basis. You should be more in tune with this kind of like cynical outrage manufacturing than anybody else. Even down to what he's saying here. That's what I say all the time in all of my media appearances. What do I always say? I'm like, look, man, I'm vulgar and I'm working on it. And sometimes I say things that people don't like to hear. But what matters is what's inside. What matters is who you are. What matters is what your advocacy is. Hasanabi says the R word just outside stream. No, I don't. And I try not to in general. And I haven't in a very long time. But it's just like, if he was a Nazi, the Republicans would love him. What are we talking about?
But it also very much is because of the place that I come from and the world that I come from. And I am working very hard to always be improving and to always be being a better version of myself. I think for a lot of people, that's what they're working on too. And it is a way that we can sort of demonstrate that you can change. You can improve yourself. You can take accountability for things that you have said or done in the past. And while, of course, the Republican Party is going to try to hammer me into the ground on this stuff, but truthfully, as I go around Maine, people in Maine don't care about that. People in Maine care about the fact that the hospitals are closing.
Yes. You do have a 27-point lead over Janet Mills, so clearly you're right about that. I think in the general it's slightly different, right? Because the Republican Party, as you know, and Susan Collins is no fool, she's held that seat for a while. They're doing their Oppo research on you. I got to ask the question, Graham, is there other stuff out there that's going to come out now, between now and November? Is there another chat forum we don't know about, another tattoo we haven't seen?
No. Everybody's seen all my tattoos now, and everybody's read all my internet comments. And we released everything. Okay. We put it all back in October.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. And look, the Republican Party is absolutely going to lie. At some point that's coming. They, said they swift voted John Kerry. They said Barack Obama wasn't an American. When it comes to the Republican Party, God only knows what they're going to come up with that isn't true. They just ran an AI-generated thing.
They did, yes. Ridiculous.
Yeah. So, the dirty tricks, that's all going to happen.
But one last question on this before we move on. What do you say to supporters of Janet Mills' establishment? They're going to say, look, it's just not worth the risk. Why put up someone with all of this stuff who has to explain away Nazi-looking tattoos? Why not just put up the governor of the state who's already won statewide as a Democrat and doesn't have a tattoo of a skull and bones on her?
Because the governor consistently loses in the polls to Susan Collins. And the governor is very much close to the political establishment. The governor was the DS candidate, chosen by Washington, D.C. I'll tell you, that's far more risky right now. People don't want establishment politics.
That's true.
People want real people in politics who are going to fight for the material needs of real people.
On that note, let's do a quick rapid fire to see where you stand on some real issues. Would you vote in favor of a $20 minimum wage?
Yes.
Would you vote to get rid of the Senate filibuster?
Yes.
Would you vote to convict Donald Trump in an impeachment trial?
Yes.
Do you support statehood for D.C. and Puerto Rico?
Yes.
Do you support Chuck Schumer for Senate majority?
Okay, bro, chill. Now he's just copying my shit. I'm just, I'm done.
Majority leader?
No.
Do you support Hakeem Jeffries for House Speaker in 2027?
No.
Would you support a ban on assault weapons?
No.
If you go on to win your Senate seat in Maine, will you run for president in 2028?
No.
All right, so those answers, I think a lot of people will be nodding along, apart from probably the assault weapon.
You'd be 100% correct if you admitted Platner might be fake, might stab the left in the back. Because you don't, you're only 50% correct. Yeah, there's no reason for me to engage in this kind of assumptions. and be disillusioned and be pessimistic right now.
Weapons ban questioned, which I think, as you know, a lot of progressives will disagree with you on and say it's a major issue that helps prevent mass shootings. What would you say to them?
I think in a country that's already awash in guns, we have 20 to 30 million AR-15s in America. We don't actually know how many. Restricting access to people with a violent history or people who are going to commit a violent act, that is where we're going to see the most effect. And I support universal background checks, and I support red flag laws, like the one that Maine passed by ballot measure overwhelmingly last November. I think that those, combined with expanding mental health services across the board as part of a much more substantial healthcare system, and using the power of the federal government to elevate people out of...
I'm from Puerto Rico. What's your take on statehood or independence? Much respect. Whatever the Puerto Ricans want, I'm happy to abide by that. Whatever Puerto Ricans want, they should get. Obviously, independence is much less viable as a pathway because it, I think, requires tremendous amounts of reparations. And even independence alone is very difficult to push for. But then also reparations, virtually impossible, even though I think that's the just and moral thing to do. Honestly, by my estimation, there's no independence without reparations. Like, Puerto Rico deserves reparations beyond independence. Puerto Rico deserves reparations even if it doesn't get independence. But if that's not the case, or if the people want statehood, then statehood is also perfectly fine. But again, I think more so than statehood or independence, what Puerto Rico deserves, what Puerto Rico should get, is reparations. I'm going to keep saying that.
Poverty. I think holistically, when we think about gun violence, that's where we're going to get the most reduction.
You said earlier this week that you think Chuck Schumer will back your candidacy if you're the general election official Democratic candidate going into...
By the way, as far as being regretful over his service, I can't speak to what's in someone's heart, but I can tell you what's not going to be a good message to put out there, because he's not going to get swift-boated right now. But if he were to run around and say he's regretful for his service, he 100% would get swift-boated. For those of you who don't know, that's John Kerry. A guy who is a grunt machine gunner for the Marine Corps, coming out and being like, I'm so sad about all of the heinous things that I did when I was in war. It would be over for him. Just so you guys understand, he's running an election, okay? Not even in a place like Maine. That would be a generational mistake. There are plenty of veterans who feel that way. Many of them are in this community, and it doesn't matter. The moment that you say, "Oh, we fucked up, we shouldn't have done this," even if you're 100% right, that is an unbelievable controversy that the Republicans would pounce on. You guys have to wake up to the reality that that there is a deification of the American military and U.S. empire in this country, and any candidate, regardless if they had Purple Hearts or not, if they were to come out and say what we did was wrong, what I feel is a personal distaste for the actions that I took, participating in the war machine. Sure, that makes you feel good, and it's the right thing to say, and it's the right thing to do. But the idea that Americans would look at that and go, "Oh yeah, this guy's actually being bold and brave." Does that worship of the military exist among moderates or mainly Republicans? Brother, that worship of the military exists among liberals too. Hello? How do you think we justify all of this, the death and destruction campaigns? It's baby steps, okay? You got to start off by trying to put a dent in the military-industrial complex by talking about how there's an opportunity cost to all the wars that we're waging. How, you got to appeal to the selfish sensibilities of Americans by saying every dollar is being wasted overseas, blowing up schools rather than building schools here. Americans do not give a fuck, for the most part, about the morality of the equation. You did not make me angry. It's crazy to me how so much of the convo around Grant Platner is based on what some online leftist thinks and not his concrete plans for restoring the medical system in Maine. We've had a crisis in healthcare up here for well over a decade. It's gotten so much worse recently. He's the only one with a real plan. Thank you. You're 100% correct, Ben Fish. Yes, and that's precisely the reason why he's winning.